Thank you for joining our MTV anniversary discussion. It's me, Martha Quinn, and Christie James. Am I pointing to you right now, Christie? I'm just getting used to this Zoom TV show thing. Am I pointing to you?
I'm not sure, actually. We could be,
kind of like,
we're somewhere around the same vicinity, though.
yeah. Am I looking at you right now? I can't tell. Oh, man. Well, anyway, we are getting together to talk about MTV's 39th anniversary, which is this Saturday. I can't believe it. And you know what is so crazy? The craziest thing about MTV turning 39 is that I'm 37.
Which is insane. And you still look the same. I swear you do.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you. And thank you, Madison Reed, for helping to achieve that effect with your home hair color. So anyway, I have pulled together a couple of moments that I really like. They're indicative of what life was like in the 80s and when M stood for music. And it was such a special time. I always say that it was a period of time that only those of us who were around in the 80s actually experienced. And I think that's partially why it's so heavily valued. If it was still going on today, if MTV had VJs and videos, people would still be saying, oh my God, it's not Prince. It's not, like I see in the background, that's so awesome of your house. It's not Prince, it's not the Go-Go's. Oh, it's not the same. Well, being that it only lasted in our time, it's sort of forever preserved as the world of Prince and the Go-Go's. So it's kind of neat. And us, the VJs.
So for people who are just tuning in, how did you come up with only 3 clips? Because I mean, the 80s, it's hard to like dwindle it down into 3. So like, why did you pick these 3 in particular? Because I've seen them.
Newsflash, I did add a 4th.
Okay.
At the end. But the reason is, you know, God bless YouTube. This is something that didn't exist in the 80s, but it exists now. And it's kind of a weird thing to be able to go to YouTube and then find pieces of your past. So it's pretty neat. And honestly, I just went to YouTube. I went to Martha Quinn, MTV, and I just couldn't decide. There were so many different types of clips. There was me with the VJs. There was me with you and Karina. And there was me, you know, so I just decided, okay, I'm going to pick these particular ones because they're fun or they sum something up. And they're all from MTV. So they're all just examples of fun. The first one I really like, it's David Lee Roth, who is probably my favorite person to interview. Back in the day, I was very, very serious interviewing him because I felt like I'm going to be the one to crack that nut, to get underneath that, you know, razzmatazz exterior that he always has. He is never at a loss for words. He is razor sharp whenever he opens his mouth. And I somehow thought, I'm going to get to the bottom. I'm going to cut him open and I'm going to make him, you know, see the real him in there. But now I see it's all fun. Just have fun. But that's okay. So in the 80s, MTV came along and broke so many conventions. I mean, even our logo was a non-logo. It seemed like it was hand spray painted and it changed all the time. So that's a convention that MTV changed. Just the idea of having the 24-hour format of radio, but on TV, putting those together, never, ever done before, ever. The idea of a VJ never happened before. So the 80s started with a lot of breaking the rules, but leading that party along with us, without a doubt, establishing the rules are not meant for us attitude was Van Halen. And here's David Lee Roth summing it up perfectly to me in 1982.
Van Halen controls all of its press, all of the media. We have no fat cat manager in a 3-piece suit saying, kid, cut your hair like this, and kid, do like that. We be ourselves. What you see on stage with Van Halen is only what you're going to find underneath the stage. And what you see backstage is probably what you're going to find upstairs in the hotel. You know? And it's a kind of a non-image. And that's the integrity of Van Halen, if there's any to be found.
There is no one like David Lee Roth. I mean, you could see him sitting there, and he's a fairly large guy. So for him to come in with like all of that hair and just come, you know, swashbuckling in, literally like a 1982 pirate, like how a pirate would walk down the street. It seems like, you know, Stephen Piercy was saying that to you and me, Christy, that they were like cement pirates in the 80s, like pirates, but who lived in the city. And you can see David Lee Roth totally had that. And you can see how that attitude continued through bands, especially California bands, well into the 90s.
It's kind of crazy, though. I've heard you say that you had no idea of the wild lifestyle that these guys were living outside of, you know, just your interviews with them on the MTV set. You didn't know what was going on in the hotel rooms or on the tour bus, and that Van Halen and Motley Crue and all of these bands were really, you know, kind of living it up.
You know, there's a video on YouTube that I didn't pick of me talking to Motley Crue because the quality is just not good. But I was thinking about that. I was watching this video now, having seen The Dirt, and I was watching that, like, I can see it. I had no idea. To me, they seem like, you know, nice guys that I might have gone to high school with, but now they kind of, you know, they're just kind of wild and rocker. But, you know, you saw a lot of rockers like that in the 80s, but I can see that I had no idea. And it's even kind of hard to see when you look at Vince Neil and Nikki Sixx in that interview. I was watching that. You can go on YouTube and check it out. Everybody feel free to do so. But you go, wow, I can't believe what all was going on. So the next clip that I picked, was me talking to Boy George. And one of the reasons that I really liked this clip is, first of all, we were both young. He was like 22, 23. I was the same. And Boy George said to me at one of our parties recently, he said, you know, the 80s was a time when people didn't have stylists, when fashion was about expressing yourself. And here in this clip, back in 1983, he's saying basically the same thing.
You obviously take fashion seriously in the band, or you, probably you the most. Why do you laugh?
Well, I don't take it that seriously because I think, well, for a start, I don't believe in it. And anyway, what I'm wearing isn't fashion. Fashion is what everybody wears.
It's a look, a specific look.
Yeah, but I mean, not lots of people don't look like me, so that's not fashion. Fashion is what the masses wear, and what I wear is like personal to me. I mean, you know, Liberace isn't fashionable, is he? He just is an eccentric, and that's what I am.
What's interesting to me about this too is I kind of am amazed that I was sitting there and I'm like, you think of yourself as an eccentric? Like, I don't know how I would do that today. Like, I was probably as nervous as I am today, but I feel like I was more able to be kind of calm and slightly combative a little bit, which sort of is interesting to me to see, that's how I conducted myself back then. But I can watch a lot of my clips and see by the way I'm acting who I was hanging around with.
Oh, really? Who were you hanging around with when you did that interview with George?
Yeah, that's a good question. At that time, I was still friends with most of my friends from NYU. So I still had my New York, my awesomeing New York kind of attitude. And I can see that a little bit, kind of like that. Yeah, yeah, you consider yourself like that kind of thing. And as time goes on, I can see the different friends who I had in myself. Like there was a period of time where I was acting sort of Cupid doll, and I'm like, okay, that's my friend Laura. There was another thing I was doing that I was watching. I'm like, that's my stepmother Jane. So I can kind of see who I was hanging around with in all of my interviews. I wonder if right now, Christy, I wonder if right now I'm acting like you.
Maybe, I don't know. You're always super positive, so maybe I'm acting like you. You're rubbing off on me.
No, I'm rubbing off on you. I mean, no, I didn't. I always do that. I say things opposite. You're rubbing off on me. I'm always doing that. In the car, I'll say, step on the gas when I don't mean that. I need to put on the brakes. All right, well, anyway. Questions? Do you have anything you want to ask me at this point?
You know, for a lot of people who, who weren't there watching MTV when it first started, how would you describe it to someone as far as like a vibe on set?
On the set? Very much like a family. We were together 24/7 because that was back in the day before MTV was a well-oiled machinery. So it was, there were days when we'd record entire days, me, Alan, Mark, JJ, all of us, Nina, And then we get a call at 8 o'clock at night. Oh my God, the audio guy forgot to connect the microphones. So we were all back in the studio at 11 o'clock at night doing the whole thing again, everything again. So we were around each other all of the time. That room that you're sitting in, Christie, I can see from here is bigger than our first MTV dressing room, which was me, Mark Goodman, Alan Hunter, JJ Jackson, and Nina Blackwood. All of us just crammed in. I always say you, me, and Karina are like a basket of kittens. And back then we were more like sardines. We didn't even have as much room as a basket of kittens.
Oh my God. Okay, let's get to the next clip because, you know, I love my man.
Okay, well, back to YouTube. This is so funny. There's lots of things that I see on YouTube. Like if you had asked me, hey, Martha, did you ever meet Phil Collins? I would say to you, no, I don't think so. Well, YouTube says something else. YouTube says, actually, Martha, you did. In my defense, I wasn't in the room with them. They were in Madrid, though I was having a full-on conversation with them. But so that's why I pulled this. I pulled this for you because you love Phil Collins.
Yeah.
I also thought I asked kind of an interesting question about this period of time, and this was early 90s. This was my second incarnation on MTV, and I was hosting a show called Rockline, which was a live call-in show. So they were in Madrid, I was in LA, and obviously I could see from my question that it was the period of time where artists were just starting to record on CDs and think of their music presentation in terms of CDs. And so I asked Phil Collins, is it an adjustment for you not having a side one and a side two?
Do you still tend to think in terms of side one and side two?
No, that's one of the first big changes really, because you know when you have a cassette you can actually change, you know, you have a sort of beginning of side one, end of side one, and then you have a beginning of side two and an end of side two. But with a CD you've got to think of the whole thing in its entirety, and so of course, you know, some people won't listen to the whole thing all in one go, so it's kind of a different mentality, but we'll get used to it.
Oh my God, they'll get used to CDs, they'll get used to MP3s.
Oh my
they'll
God.
Get used to, I mean, so much has changed since then.
So much has changed since March.
Yeah. That is true. That is true. But one thing remains the same. Everybody still loves MTV. And I think maybe that's a big part of why people like to go back is because 80s music, we've talked about this so many times. 80s music really, for some reason, has the power to lift you up. And remember when we were talking to Huey Lewis?
Yeah.
He had a whole long, complicated explanation about song structure and melody and chord changes. And he got really intricate as to why 80s music is so uplifting. And I've read since then, a lot of musicologists talk about that is true. Lyrical content, melody structure, all of that kind of stuff. There's like scientific, mathematical reasons why we react to 80s music. So what was I talking about?
We're talking about Phil Collins and 80s music. That ties into it. And it's true.
Oh,
It's not just the music. Like since, you know, when you're not feeling good or you're feeling down, like people who listen to the Martha Quinn show, they always call in and say, you know, this music picks me up. This music makes me feel good. This music takes me back to a better time. And I think when you see those clips on YouTube, or we listen to Martha Quinn, or we see a video of you, you know, or think about MTV the way it was in the 80s, it does make us feel good. It does lift us up. It does bring us back to a better time. So
you'll be happy to know that my UPS driver pulled up and Huey Lewis and the News was blasting out of the truck. That's your other fave.
Yep.
And I said, hey, bonus points if you know who this is. And he goes, what? Huey Lewis and the News. They pick me up. And I was like, yeah. And I made a mental note. See? And that's exactly what Huey was saying. He must have known what he was doing because he was saying this guy was going on. Just puts me in a good mood, picks me up. He was actually listening to the greatest hits album, so he was not playing around with how much he loved Huey Lewis.
I'm not mad at him. I'm not mad at him. Okay, so you said you snuck in a fourth clip.
Okay, I snuck in a fourth clip. Let me think of it there before I get to the fourth clip, which is Bob Dylan. The other aspects about MTV is that people forget now how massive, what a mind-blowing experience it was to see MTV. Like in a the ZZ Top documentary that's out now on Netflix or whatever, they were talking about how they all saw it, those three guys saw it, and they were like calling each other on the phone going, there's this really wild show on. And then they call each other back like 15 minutes later and go, when's this show about music going to end? And then they call back an hour later, when is this show going to end? And it seemed like that. It just seemed like, no, this can't really be happening. This can't be going on. This can't be for real. Like MTV didn't come into Manhattan for probably a year and a half. And so when we finally got MTV, and I worked on MTV, I myself would be home going, no, this can't be happening. No, this is too weird, because it never had been seen before. I mean, we had rockers doing our commercials, and even though our commercials were like kind of lo-fi, they were low budget, but just nothing had ever been done like that before. And now, you know, you saw Entertainment Tonight, Mary Hart or whoever back then, you know, all pretty and dolled up. Now everybody's got the tattoos.
Yeah.
And everybody's rocked out.
If you could say one thing about each MTV VJ, what would it be?
Well, I have the perfect analogy, which JJ Jackson always hated. And we did a photo shoot for People magazine. And I said, let's do it like this. And JJ said, no, don't suggest that. They'll do it. So I kept my mouth shut. But I feel like we are like Gilligan's Island, the crew.
I didn't see that coming.
What?
I said I didn't see that coming. Gilligan's Island.
I'm Marianne.
Uh-huh.
Nina is Ginger. Alan is Gilligan. Mark is maybe the skipper. And JJ is the professor, for sure.
Wow. That's amazing. Aw, I love you
Yeah.
guys. Okay. Bob Dylan. Why did you pick this clip?
Well, because anytime Bob Dylan opens his mouth, you can learn something. So this interview is great, but there's like 5 different sections of it. And this particular piece, I really thought was the most insightful.
Martha, it's been a enjoyable talking to you. I'm serious. You asked some really good questions.
Didn't you think that was so smart of him?
Very insightful man.
Bob Dylan, you've got to say. And what about those shorts I was wearing? That's like Boy George said. That was a period of time before stylists. I mean, I looked like I was wearing a pair of pajama shorts and a tank top, and I'm interviewing Bob Dylan at Wembley Stadium. But that was a period of time when, you know, it just wasn't so high prep. You know, it was just like, this is rock and roll. This is how we're doing it. And let's go.
Well, it worked. And thank you so much to you and all of the VJs and Bob Pittman, who's actually running iHeart Media now, and he brought you back so that way we can enjoy you every day for everything that you guys have done for pop culture and music in general. I mean, it's huge, the contribution.
Let me back up and explain the Bob Pittman connection. I was a college intern at WNBC, a radio station in New York. Bob Pittman had been the program director, and he was very famous because he was like 23, the youngest programmer in the country, major radio station. So the halls kind of reverberated with Bob Pittman, the home of Bob Pittman. He was legendary to me, but I'd never met him. And so one day I'm in the back, in the closet, filing records. Or actually, I just stopped by because I was going home from my work I was answering phones at a dorm. And there was a lot of traffic, 5 o'clock in New York City. And I thought, oh, I'll just jump off the bus and go see what's happening up at WNBC. So I go up in my clothes that I wore to work at Weinstein Dormitory, NYU, my old dorm. And I had recently graduated college. And a guy sitting in the office said, hey, what's Bob Pittman doing? And that didn't surprise me at all because Bob Pittman was legendary. Mm-hmm. And somebody else said, oh, he's doing this MTV thing. And Buzz Brindle, who's the guy I interned under, turned to me and said, Martha, that's what you should do. You should be a VJ on MTV. He picks up the phone, called Bob Pittman. This is before cell phones. So it always freaks me out, like when I think about it. Like Bob Pittman picked up his phone? Do you think Bob Pittman, like, do you imagine Bob Pittman ever picking up his phone? But that day he did, I think, because it was like 5:30 by that time. So he just picked up his phone and Buzz said, oh, this girl here, she should audition. And he said, oh, send her down right now. We're doing the last day. So I hop in a cab, I go down 2 days later, I got hired. And so funny enough, years and years later, Bob Pittman, who's now the head of iHeart, our company, they were starting this all ladies music radio station in San Francisco. And he called me up and said, do you want to jump aboard? And I said, absolutely. So Bob Pittman again.
I think it's amazing. And I'm so glad that he brought you into my life. I mean, you were in my life before, but now I actually like know you and people can actually call and talk to you and really, yeah, enjoy you every day. And you're a gift, Martha Quinn.
Aw, Christy, that's so sweet of you. And I never worked with people who I felt as close to as the original MTV VJs until now, working with you and Karina Velasquez. And
Aww.
I do often wonder if that's not the culture of Bob Pittman, because he encourages teamwork, but working with you and Karina every day and talking with everybody, 80s fans, there is something magic about our radio station. Whenever someone calls in, I feel like it's when two magnets are kind of near each other and then they go. That's what happens when people call in. 80s music fans are so loving and nice and supportive, and that it's kind of like water seeks its own level. Like we were talking about, 80s music is so positive and it attracts positive people. What do you always say?
I say 80s fans are the people who will help you change your tire. They will stop and say, ma'am or sir, do you need a hand? Everyone else will just keep moving, but they'll take time to stop and say like, hey, are you okay? Do you need a hand? Yes, I do. Thank you. You must love 80s music because you're nice and awesome.
Whenever I see people in the news doing something funky, I'm always saying to my husband, that's not, I guarantee you, that person's not an 80s fan. And I feel like I'm right too. So yeah, it's so great in 2020 to be able to, oh my God, do Zoom calls and chat with people and tweet and Facebook. I mean, it's kind of crazy, all these new things that have come about, but what has stayed the same is the awesome connection. So this was fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And thank you for sharing your MTV memories with all of us.
Happy birthday, MTV.
Woo!
We love you. And I'm so happy to be playing all that music every day on iHeart 80s at 103.7, the greatest music from the MTV generation with Christy. Am I pointing to you, Christy?
I don't know. I could be down.
With Christy.
There you
go. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.